Welcome to this tutorial. We're going to be learning some very basic Photoshop skills here, and we'll start off by opening a new file. There's a couple ways to open a new file. You can either create new or open, or if you have some recent files that you've already opened, you have them here. We can go file, we can go new, or open. If we go on open, we can bring in pictures and open a new picture. We can also go open, and to bring in multiple pictures, we would just hold down Control if you're on PC, Command if you're on Mac, and click and press open. As you can see here, we have all of the pictures opened, and here up top you'll see the name of the picture. You can close each picture down by pressing the X, and you're left with nothing. And as you see here on our recent, we have all of our pictures again. We can just click on one of them and open them back up. Now let's say we want to open up a completely new document. Say you have a specific size that you want to work with. We can go here to File, New, and it'll open up this new document window. So here you can choose from different templates that are already assigned to Photoshop. If we go to recent, these are the ones that we've used before. But for this tutorial, let's just go with 1920 over here on the preset details. You can also name it. Example, you can do the width, which is 1920, and the height by 1080. That's a normal resolution. You can choose pixels, inches, centimeter, millimeters, and so forth. But for anything with illustrations and stuff like that for the computer, you will need to use pixels most of the time. You can choose if you want it to be horizontal or vertical. We're going to do horizontal for this, and we can choose resolution as well. Now for our resolution, if you are printing it on, let's say, a t-shirt or something else, you do want this to become 300 resolution. For anything else other than printing, you can leave it at default. I think the default is 75 pixels. Could be wrong, but you can leave it at that, since this will just be an example. Usually don't mess with RGB or 8-bit or anything like that. And right here, background contents, you can either have a white background, a black background, or you can choose a completely different color background. So when you open a file, this is what it'll do. Here we have our background. So now that we have our background here, the very first thing I want you to do is go to Window, Workspace, Essentials. Make sure that's clicked so we have all of our windows exactly the same, our tools and our panels. Now to get familiar with Photoshop, this first panel, this is where all the work will be done. Any editing and stuff like that will be here. Over here to the right, we have these panels that have a variety of different photo editing tools. So here, if we click on the swatches panel, we can choose any of these colors and it'll change the color over here. That'll come in useful when you use a paint bucket fill or a paintbrush tool, which we'll get into later. Of course, there are some other panels that have different tools, and to unlock those, you go into Window and you choose any of these panels that don't have a check mark. As you can see, we have the layers over here, which is on our right here. We have our properties. Also on the right, we have our swatches, our options, our tools. So if you want to see something such as a histogram, we can click on it and it'll show us. If you don't want it to be right here, and if you prefer it to be up here, you just grab it, hold, drag, and you let go. Same thing with this navigator one. Now we have all of our panels right there. If you want to get rid of it, you can drag it out, click the X, drag it out, click the X. If you want to bring it back, again, go to Window, and you choose whichever one you want to view. The next option that we want to show you here is the tools panel. Here on the tools panel, you have different tools, and if you hover over them, it'll tell you exactly what they are used for or how to use them. There are also some hidden tools that you can right click and it'll show you a little bit more. So here I can go to, let's say you go over here to the paint bucket. You can right click it. There's a gradient tool and a material drop tool. So these have different tools inside of the tool. So let's say I want to do a text tool. Click on the T, which is the text tool. It's this horizontal type tool. Now if I right click on it, but let's say I want to do a vertical type tool, we can right click and go over to the vertical type tool, and now we'll have a vertical. We can type vertically. Now each one of these tools has something called options. You can find it on this horizontal bar up here at the top. So this is one of the interfaces that actually does change depending on what tool you're using. Let's say you're using a type tool, you'll have these options. But if we switch over to a brush tool, you see this changed. Okay, so now that we have our brush tool here, we can go ahead and apply an option. To change the size of a brush, what we're going to do is click over here on the brush picker, and we can increase the size or decrease. The bigger the number is, the wider the brush will be, if you can see right there. Another option we can do is the hardness of the brush. If I put it to 100%, you see it's more crisp, more edgy. The edges are nicer and you can see them better. But if I lower the hardness, you can see it gives it kind of a glowy effect around the edges. It kind of makes it a little bit softer, if you will. Makes it kind of blend in. And as you remember, the color I'm using is the color I chose earlier in the swatches panel. You can change it from the swatches panel if you want, or you can change it from here. You can change a different color and we're back to the blue. Let's say I'm drawing something and I make a mistake. Let's say I want to get rid of that again. I press Ctrl Z and it's gone. But if I press Ctrl Z again, it won't get rid of this as well. It'll just get rid of this again. It'll redo it. So to get rid of this, you have to press Ctrl Alt Z on Windows or Command Option Z on Mac. So let's say I draw that line, I draw this line, I draw that one, and I draw that one. I want to get rid of them because I made a mistake. So Ctrl Z will get rid of one. But if I press Ctrl Z again, it'll bring it back. So you press Ctrl Alt Z to get rid of multiple. And there you go. We got rid of all of them. And of course, up here we have our main menu. So we can go to File, Edit. There's a bunch of different options up here, which are a little bit more advanced, but they're not necessary to do some really cool stuff here in Photoshop. So now that we have our basics on the interface and how to open a file, let's actually open a file. We can go to Recents, or let's just go to File, Open, and choose a picture. I'm just going to choose this one. And here we have our picture. Let's learn how to zoom in and out of photographs. So the simplest way to do it, you can click on this zoom tool, which will magnify, and you can click wherever you want to zoom. And we can get really close in there and see all the pixels. And then you'd go up here and you can zoom out. Pretty simple, straightforward. You can also go over here to resize window to fit. Go down here and we can change it to 50%. To make it fit, or we can go to fit screen and that'll fit the whole image into the screen. You can also click fill screen, which will make it the exact resolution that you brought it into. I'm going to click fit screen so we can actually see the whole image. So let's say you're using the paintbrush here and you want to zoom in without clicking over here on the zoom tool. You can use a shortcut, Alt, and then scroll in with your mouse wheel, or if you're on Mac, Option, scroll in with your mouse wheel. And to scroll out, you would just scroll backwards, and that's a simple way to zoom in and out of pictures. So let's say we want to get really close over here without changing our tool, and we can do that. Okay, so let's say you zoomed into here, but you want to move over to this side, right? You have your paintbrush, but you want to be able to paint something on this side. You can't really move unless you go over here to the hand tool. But now you have to click the hand tool, then go back to the brush tool. And let's say you want to move up there now. You have to go back to the hand tool, move, and brush up there as well. But without switching your brush out for the hand tool, you can also hold spacebar and click and drag to wherever you want to move. There's no need to switch over to your paintbrush and then the hand tool. So you can hold down space, left mouse click, and drag. And then you can use your brush tool without switching. And that's a simple way to not be switching out so much, using a couple shortcuts here and there, so it makes it simpler and faster. Okay, so now that we have all of that down, our brush strokes and zooming in and out, let's say you made a mistake on this, right? Let's press Ctrl Z like we did earlier. But as you see, it only takes me back one step. Over here, we can do our history. And if I go and expand our history right here, we just click and drag. This is all that we've done to this certain picture. So we can go back through here if you like, or forward, or we can close that down just by clicking on it again. You can go to edit, step backwards, edit, step backwards, edit, step backwards, but that's a little bit tedious and too time consuming. But we can also step forward, but as I said, it's a little bit too tedious or time consuming. But if you go to edit and you scroll here, look at the right, it tells you exactly what the command is to do what you want to do. So to step backwards, we have to click Alt plus Control plus Z. If you're on Mac, it'll be Option plus Command plus Z. So let's try it out. Control Alt Z brings me all the way back. But let's say we want to go forward now. Well, step forward is Shift Control Z. Shift plus Control plus Z. And we can bring all of that back to the point where we were. So this is a very simple how to correct your mistakes if any mistake was made. So let's say we want to fill that, but I changed my mind. I don't want to fill it. We can press Control Z. But let's say I also don't want to have all of this. We can press Control Alt Z, Control Alt Z, Control Alt Z. Oh, but I want to keep that again, so Shift Control Z, and there we have it. Very simple. And these shortcuts will come in handy later when you have more time-consuming projects. These shortcuts will really help you out. So the sooner you can learn them, the better it will be for you. So the next step we want to take is actually save this file. So if we go over here to File, Save, it'll ask you exactly what the quality of the option is. A large file is maximum. We'll make it basically the same as you see it right now. And you can just press OK. And that just saved over the file, the original file. So if we go over here to Files and click on the examples, you can see it saved over the file, which usually that's not something that you want. So to actually save it as a copy, you would go over here to Save As and name it something different. So here we can save it as, let's just say signs.jpg. You can save it as a Photoshop file so you can come back and edit it. Or if you're ready to save it as a PNG or a JPEG, those are actually just pictures. But for this, we're going to save it as a Photoshop file so we can come back and edit it later. If you're going to be sharing it with somebody, they might not have Photoshop, so they won't be able to open it. But you can save it as a JPEG. They can open it, or you can save it also as a PNG. So for this tutorial, we're just going to save it as a JPEG and leave everything as default. Here we're going to have the JPEG options. We'll just leave it at high and everything else will stay default. Click OK and your picture's saved. Just make sure you're saving frequently so that you don't lose all of the work that you have done. Okay, so let's talk about resizing images. So the very first thing we want to do, let's say you want this same image, but you want to have a different size of it. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your image is big enough so that when you downscale it, when you make it smaller, it won't look a little bit blurry or pixelated or anything like that. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that your image is big enough so that if you are going to scale up, it's not going to look blurry or pixelated. So down here we have a little bar and it's going to say document or doc. And what you want to do is click and hold and it'll tell you exactly the width is 1920 by the height is 855 pixels. Okay, so let's say we want to scale this image down. We're going to go over here to image size. And here we have all of these options. If you want to make this window a little bit bigger, you can go to the bottom, drag it out. And that'll give you a little bit more working space. So here on the left, you'll see a preview of the image, and over here on the right, you can see the controls, the dimensions of that image. So the first thing that we want to make sure is that this link is actually turned on. If you hover over it, it says that it does not constrain the aspect ratio. So if we click it off, that's what it looks like. And if we have it on, these two little lines appear. The width and the height are linked together. So if we change the width, the height will change. So it'll stay the same ratio of the original picture. So that way you don't have a squished image or a stretched image or anything like that. And over here on the resample, make sure it's clicked. This is just telling Photoshop that it's okay if you delete some pixels And over here on the left of the width and height, you'll see that it says inches. These are the dimensions that are being used. But if we're going to be using it for screen, we always want to be working in pixels instead of inches. So here it changed our width and our height. We change it to inches, percent, but always use pixels for stuff like this. If you're going to be printing, you can go ahead and use inches. But for screen stuff, we're going to be using pixels. So here we go. If we change the width to, let's say, 1080, you can see that the height also changed to 481 because they were both linked and you didn't have to do that. It keeps the aspect ratio the same. So after you have all this done, you just want to go over here and click OK. And there's your image. If we go over here to the document, there you can see it's 1080 pixels by 481 pixels, and we resized it. Go over here to zoom, fit the screen, and there we go. Now to save it, we go over here to save as. Let's save it as signs-1. So here's the original one, and this is it. We're saving it as because we don't want it to be the same size as this and replace it. So we'll just go save, and the options, click OK, and there you have your image saved. We can open it here. So this is the signs one, the original, 1920 by 855, and then signs 1080 by 481. If we open both of them up, here's our 1920 one, and here's our 1080. And that's how you resize a image in Photoshop. Now let's talk about the crop tool. So here we have the crop tool right here on our tools panel. If we click on it, you can see that we can crop it. You'll see that around the edge of this picture, we have these dotted lines. If we zoom in, dotted lines, and these corners over here. So you can grab onto one of these corners, we'll zoom out here, and drag in. So let's say we want to get rid of all of this background, and we just want to have the sign right there. That's good right there. Now we want to go over here and click the check mark up top to finalize it, and there's our new cropped image. So let's say we have an image that's kind of crooked like this, and we want to make it a little bit straighter. We would click on the image with our crop tool selected, and then go over here to the edge of the corner, any corner, it doesn't matter which corner it is, and then we can just rotate it until we get it to the position that we want. Then we can either press enter or return on Mac, or the big check mark that was up here. Now let's say there's a couple pixels missing from here. There's the piece missing from here. Okay. So you want to make sure delete crop pixels is unchecked, so that in a situation like this where there's a piece missing, you can click on it again and reposition it. And there we have our pixels. See, if we have delete cropped pixels and then I crop in, and we press check mark, if we go back in with our crop tool, we can't do that anymore. So make sure that delete cropped pixels is unchecked. So that way, when we have anything like this, and maybe we want to add a pixel, maybe we want to add this part, maybe we want to add that part, we can add it with no problem. And that's how you rotate and crop a picture. Let's say we want to add a little bit of a border perhaps around it, or expand the image a little bit so we can add some text maybe on top. So what we're going to do first is go over here to image, canvas size, and here in canvas size what we're going to change is first off inches to pixels, because we're always going to be working in pixels when we're doing stuff like this, unless you're printing, which you can work in inches. And I'm going to click relative. Now as you saw there, it changed the width to 0 and the height to 0. We will be adding to the image instead of knowing the final image size. If you know the final image size, you can uncheck relative and just say 1920. Let's say we want to keep it at 1080. We press OK, and this will give us all of this extra space to work in for this picture. But we don't want that. So let's go to image, canvas size, and we're going to click relative. Change this to pixels. So let's say we just want to add on the width 400 pixels, and on the height we'll just say 0 for this. So press OK, and as you see there, we didn't delete the cropped pixels. It expanded to the sides of the picture, so it has the same pixels that we told it not to delete. But if we wanted to, we could press delete that and then resize it with the crop tool here. And there we have our picture that's cropped now. And now we would go into canvas size, say we want 400 pixels, and press OK. And there we go. It added 200 to this side and 200 to this side. But let's say you want to add it just to the left side or the right side. What we're going to do here is go back into canvas size and go here. Make sure that this is set to pixels, relative is checked. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click this middle button that has an arrow that's pointing to the left. The background will be to the right. So let's put 800 to the right, to the width, and click OK. And here you see it added 800 pixels to the right. And you can do this as well to the left. Just go up here to canvas size, anchor it this to the left. We'll put 800 here, search that at pixels. And there we go, to the left. Now you'll notice that this is a checkered background. And what this checkered background is basically, it's telling you that there's nothing there. It's a transparent background and there's no color, there's no picture, there's nothing. You can fill it with the fill bucket tool here, and you can change the color over here. So let's say we want to make it white. Choose white, choose the bucket tool, click on it, and there you have a white background. Alright, so now we're going to talk about layers. So layers are basically like we could explain it as a bunch of pieces of glass stacked one on top of the other. What we want to do here is, first off, let's bring in some pictures. So we'll go to File, Open, and let's just bring in some random pictures. Now we can just drag these pictures into the picture that we want to use them into. So here's our pictures. Now, if we want to scale this down, we just click on it. So we can scale it down so it doesn't do this wonky thing. So it'll lock onto it. What we want to do is hold down Shift and scale it down. So that way it doesn't move the aspect ratio. Now to move it, we want to use the Move tool here. And we can position it wherever we want. If we want to make it a little bit smaller, we can hold down Shift, apply transformation, and then you can move. So that's one layer. And then let's say we want to have this layer right behind it. We can do this, hit apply, and we're good. Shift, left mouse click. And then if we want to move it a little bit this way. Now let's say we want to have this layer, this row layer behind this sign. So what we're going to do is go over here to layers, the layers panel here. And if you don't see your layers panel, what you're going to do is go to Windows and click on Layers panel. Layers right here. So what we want to do is move this road layer picture behind this picture. So here, if we click on this, this is our layer. Layer 2 is our road. Layer 1 is this big sign. So what we want to do is grab this, left mouse click, hold, and then drag it down until you see that line right there. Then drop it down. And we have it behind that. This little eye indicates the layer visibility. If I click on the eye, it'll hide the layer, any layer. So let's say we want to hide that layer. If you want to view all but one layer, you hold down Alt or Option on the Mac and you click on the layer that you want to see. So it'll only show you one layer instead of all of them. So it depends what layer you selected on. So let's say we select layer 1. We bring a brush tool over here, and as you can see, I'm going to start brushing over here. It'll affect only this layer. So if I turn that layer off, it won't affect any of the other two layers. Although it seems that it affected it over here, that's because it's the size of the canvas. So if we turn that off, here you can see this is the transparent background, and I'm just coloring out over it. I'm also using the paintbrush over this, which we don't want. So that's where layers come in. So let's say we want to open up a new layer. We click on this little icon down here next to the trash can icon. So it created this new layer for us. Now, if we put this layer right underneath layer 1, it's all transparent. But we can color it in and it won't affect layer 1 here. So now we can bring that in. Layer 2 needs to be brought up. We can also go over here, double click, and name this white background. So now we know what it is. Same thing with this, we can name layer 2 road and layer 1 sign. We can also change the opacity of each layer. So let's say we want this row layer to be a little bit more see-through. We go right here to opacity. We can either click on opacity and two arrows will show up and you can drag it like this. Or you can click on this drop down arrow and you can drag it over here and up or down. So let's just put that at 50%. And like we did earlier as well, if you want to resize it, this little box will just pop up, right? Hold down Shift, left mouse button, and resize this picture. So let's say we want it to fill all of this white part. But now let's say I also want to move the sign layer, and I don't want it to be this far into this. So let's move it to about half. But now you can't see the full sign. So what we're gonna do is Shift and bring it down a little bit. Press enter and we can bring it down, bring it to the side, and there we go. Now let's say we want this road picture to be more see-through. Again, we can go to opacity and bring that up. We can move this even further if we want. Or now let's say we want to move a road layer in front of the sign layer. Just click on it, click and hold, and drag up. So maybe you have a picture that's not looking the way you want it to. Perhaps the exposure wasn't correct. Perhaps you want it a little bit darker, maybe a little bit lighter. So what we can do here is click on our layer that we want to fix. For this one, I'm going to fix the road. We're going to go over here to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. The brightness is pretty self-explanatory. All you're going to do is slide it up to increase the brightness or bring it down to make it darker. So I'm just going to add a little bit more brightness here. Same thing with contrast. If we bring down the contrast, it gives the image more of a flat look, as opposed to bringing up the contrast makes it really contrasty. Now there's no right or wrong on how much contrast or how much brightness you want. I mean, you could bring this all the way up. It really doesn't matter. It's your choice and what you think stylistically looks better. You don't have to use these exact numbers, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So a way to see a difference between your original image and the one you just fixed is this preview window. If you click on the preview, now it's not a major huge difference, but as you can tell, that's the original and here is the one we fixed up. We just add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of brightness. Of course, you can go all the way up on contrast or all the way down. And press OK. And there we go. Okay, so I opened this other picture because we're going to be talking about vibrance. So here, what we're going to try to make more vibrant is this blue on his shirt without affecting his skin tone. So if we go over here to Image, since we only have one layer, we're just going to make sure that this layer is the one we have. But if you are working with multiple layers, just make sure that's the layer that you want to work with. Go to Image, Adjustments, Vibrance. So if we move our saturation here, it's going to bring a lot of color into the image, as you can see. But you can also see that the face is very orange and it looks very unnatural. So we're going to put this back at 0. You can just type in 0 and it'll do it. So instead of using saturation, we're going to use vibrance. Let's just bring that all the way up to 100 just to see how it looks. The face is looking a little bit orange still. Here, let's take a look at the preview. This is the before and this is the after. Before and after. So I'm just going to bring it just down slightly. Maybe 40. We'll put it at 40. So here's the before and here's the after. It's just a slight subtle hint of blue on the shirt, as you can tell. You can also increase the saturation if you want, maybe just a little bit, plus 10. Here's the before and here's the after. So you see, vibrance just gives it just a little bit of color to the picture without overexposing it to a ridiculous amount such as this. So once you're satisfied with the colors that you chose and the way it looks, you just go ahead and click OK and your changes are applied. So another way besides vibrance to change the color of a certain picture, we can get very specific in what color that we want to change. Let's go up here to Image and let's go to Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. Right now it's put at Master, so anything that we move is going to change the whole picture. If I move over here, the hue, the saturation, the lightness. So let's put all of that back to 0. The hue changes what kind of color that you're looking for in a picture. We'll put that at 0. Saturation makes it more colorful or less colorful. And then the lightness just makes it darker or brighter. But let's just say I want to change the blue in a shirt. So we'll go over here to where it says Master and we'll go and press Blues. So when I switch hues, it'll completely change the color of the shirt. as you can see right here. So let's just make it a little bit darker here. You know, let's just make it like this color here. And of course you can mess around and do whatever you really want to do with this. So we want to make it a little bit darker, and here is our after, our before picture. So it just kind of dulled the color a little bit. Make it bluer if we really want to. You know, you can just mess around with this, and whatever you really like, you can just do. So here's the before, just subtle changes that you can do. But as a beginner, this will take time to actually master and actually get good at coloring different pictures and all of that. Let's talk about the selection tool. So this selection tool, click and drag. There's going to be areas where you can select, and only that selected area is going to be affected by it. So let's take an example. Grab this paintbrush and I draw here. Only this area will be affected. Make our size of our brush bigger if we want. And only this area is affected. So as you can see, only the area that's around these little dotted lines is affected. So let's say we want to add a little bit more. So let's say we didn't get it right this time, and you want to add maybe this tail and the hoof over here. So what you'll do is go up here and click add to selection. So now if you drag, that'll be added as well. And if we drag over here again, this is also added. So now let's say you maybe did a little bit too much, or there's a part that you don't want. So let's say you don't want all of this part. So what you'll do is go over here, go to this part and drag the whole part that you don't want. So right there, and that'll get rid of that. So let's say we also don't want any of this. There we go. So any part that you don't want, you can just completely drag it out. That one, completely just drag it out, all out. And that only selects all around this area. Of course, you can go in with the lasso tool and stuff like that, but we'll get into that later. Okay, and now what we're gonna do, we're just gonna brighten this area up a little bit, or darken it, whichever you prefer. So like we did earlier, we're gonna go over here to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. So we can brighten this up. Of course, it doesn't look good because it has jagged edges, but this is just an example. We can darken this up if we really wanted to. Add some contrast. Add a lot of contrast here, just so we can show you exactly what it looks like. And we can preview. We can click OK. So now let's say you want to make the outside of the selection a different color. So what you'll do is go over here to select, inverse it, and now everything that's outside, you can see it switched it over to this outside now. Now everything there will be affected. This bowl here will no longer be affected by a paintbrush. But now if I go down here, we can get and color this in. Or we can go here to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast, brighten it up, darken it, make it very contrasty, just like everything else, and make it blend in. And there we go. Now to deselect everything, just so you can actually edit the picture where you want to, instead of just where the selection is, you're gonna press Ctrl D, and that will get rid of everything. Okay, so as I said before, there's a couple selection tools, and we have the rectangular, we have the lasso, and we also have this quick selection tool. So for the quick selection tool, basically Photoshop just decides kind of where the edges are. If you just click and drag, of course it's not going to get all of it perfect, but it's pretty good at deciding. And right here, as you saw, I don't want to include all of this floor piece. So what I can do is hold down Alt or Option on Mac and just go over the area that I don't want to include. And there we go. And then once we're back, it'll automatically just start including things. And right here again, so I don't want that area. And there we go. And over here, I see that there's this window that I don't want. We can zoom in, clean it up. And there we go. It's a quick select tool, pretty handy for when you want to do something. And here we will try to get this as well in the image, but see, it has a little bit of problems here, but that should be pretty good. You can also, of course, change the size of how big you want your brush to be. And this is a very quick and easy way to get exactly what you're looking for. Not exactly, but pretty close to it. So now that we have this selected, let's say that with the lasso tool, we want to add just a little area somewhere. By default, the lasso tool is going to be put right here. So if we do select with the lasso tool, it's going to make a completely new selection and it's going to erase everything that you just did. We can press Ctrl Z and I'll come back. So what we want to do is press add to selection, zoom in, and let's say we want to get really close into this area right here. So what we're going to do is just go through here and just close it out. And that added to the selection. So let's say we want to remove this tree, a little bit of this tree selection right here. We'll go up here to the options and subtract from selection. So click subtract from selection. And now when you go around this, there we go. And if you really want to go very precise, you can go through here and select all of this and go even more precise by zooming in. Let's say we want to get rid of this as well. And there we go. That's basically how you use the Lasso tool and all of that. Now we can also just make an adjustment to that layer like we did to the other ones. We can go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. So we can bring down the brightness. We can pull up the contrast. And if we preview it, bring up the brightness a little bit. Or if we really wanted to, we can go over here to Select, Inverse, and maybe change the colors. Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. We can brighten up the background if we really wanted to. Maybe add a lot of contrast to it. Make it look like this. And then Control D. And there you go. And of course you can go to File, Save As, just so it doesn't overwrite the original one. You can just name it bull.jpg. And that's how you use the Quick Select and the Lasso tool. So let's talk about how you can really fine tune the selection layer. So let's go over here to Quick Select and let's just, a lot of this, let me bring the brush up and we can just quick select the bowl here. Of course it did that again. So let's just get rid of all this ground level here. Now that I have our bowl selected here, now we can go over here to Select and go Select and Mask. And here you can see exactly what is masked and what isn't, what is selected. So what we're going to do is go over here to Add to Selection, click on that, and then go to Brush Tool and zoom in. And we want to be able to get that really close. So what we're going to do is really zoom in. So this part is not added to our selection. So now it should be. We can also view it in a different color. So let's say we want to view it in red. I don't want that little piece. So we'll go up here to the minus. We'll zoom in and then we'll just paint over it. Zoom out, zoom in here as well. I don't want that part. Paint over it. This part right here and this right here. We just zoom in. And of course all of this. And you can get as detailed as you want with this. You can change brush strokes, size, and get really in there. But just for the sake of this tutorial, we'll just leave it as that. Okay, now let's go over here to output settings and we want to do output to and selection. That will output it as what we had. So let's just press OK. And of course, we can do adjustments like we did earlier. Oh, here's this area that I missed right here, but the quick selection tool isn't getting it. So let's just go to select, select and mask, and then go in here. Maybe switch the brush size here and click and drag. And there we have the other hoof, and then just click OK. And there's our selection. Press that, and there we go. That's how you can really get into it. Also, like the longer you take working on it, you can really get into those details and get those edges as perfect as you really want them. But this is just an introduction to it. Alright, so a very powerful tool that's included here in Photoshop is the spot healing brush right here. So if you hover over it, it's the spot healing brush. It removes, some unwanted stuff. So what I'm going to do, as you can see here, we can zoom into the bull's head right here. And he has all these cracks and bumps and everything. With this spot healing brush, we're going to get rid of all those. So what we're just going to do is just click over the area that we want to remove. Photoshop will just do the best it can. And again, like if we want to drag out without switching our tools, we just hold down the space bar and click and drag. As you can see, it's looking pretty good. So let's say we want this line removed from this. See, that didn't really work very well, so we're just going to click Ctrl Z. And now let's downsize our brush. And a good shortcut for this is the bracket key. Usually it's located right next to the P on your keyboard. So the left bracket key will make the pointer smaller and the right will make it bigger. Go a little bit smaller here and remove that line right there. Make that a little bit bigger. Let's say we want to get rid of this little garbage all around the statue. We can just get rid of little tiny blemishes all around. So here we can just get rid of this. So just test it out and play around with it, see what you can do. If one doesn't work, maybe the brush size is too big. Like if I do this, that's not gonna really work. So maybe lower the brush size down, and that gives it a weird kind of look. So just play around with the brush size and see what works best. Another really cool tool that Photoshop has is the clone stamp. It's basically kind of take a sample off of a picture by holding down Control and then clicking where you want it. And you can just sample that. So let's go over here to let's just make this tree line a little bit longer so it'll cover a little bit more of the sky. So what you'll do here is go over here to your size option for your brush. Put it at 80. 80 is fine. And our hardness at 100%. And our opacity, make sure it's at 100 or else it's gonna look a little bit transparent. But all you have to do is hold down Alt and you'll get this little target. You click on where you want it and then it's best if you sample from different parts of the tree. So like, let's say we want to sample from here and we can sample that. Make our tree look a little bit different from certain areas. And if there's something you made an error or something, you can just press Ctrl Alt Z like we used to. Of course, this does take a lot of time to really master and get those patterns down correctly. But you can sample from here and you can just put some more trees. If you don't like it, just press Ctrl Alt Z. It works best for like a type of pattern or the sky. But if you really get it down and you get really good at it, you can basically do it on anything. Want to give this bull another eye? We could maybe make it a little bit bigger. Sample the eye. Sample this eye. We can put another eye on here if we really wanted to. And then we could blend it in and stuff like that. But we're not going to get into that just yet. So now we're going to look into this really cool stuff. Like you can remove an object with this. It depends a little bit on your picture and exactly how difficult it is for Photoshop to remove it for you. But it's pretty good. I mean, the first thing we're going to do is grab this lasso tool and just go around our subject here, getting a little bit of that background just so we can get Photoshop to do this. Doesn't have to be perfect. And there's our selection. Now we're going to go over here to Edit, Fill, and we're going to do here in Contents. We're going to go over here to Content Aware and just press OK. Now what Photoshop is doing is creating kind of a background for us. It got rid of the subject. I mean, it's not perfect, but you can kind of see that it's pretty good. There are some blurry parts around here that you can fix with the clone stamp like we did earlier. We can create this pattern right here if we really wanted to make it look really believable. Of course, it's going to take some work to get it as realistic as possible. But that's a pretty simple, easy way to get rid of a big, large object in Photoshop. Okay, so now we're going to try it on this picture. So all you're going to do is do the same thing, just select everything. Doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, we need some of this background just so that Photoshop actually knows what it's trying to recreate. And there we go. We'll go over here to Edit, Fill, Content Aware again, and press OK. And there we go. Now we'll press Ctrl D or Command D. And here we have a picture where Photoshop basically just recreated this whole background. And if we zoom in, that did work a little bit better than the other one with the person on the bike. But here are some kind of blurry places right here. So what we can do is go to the clone stamp here, clone some of this grass here, and really just make it look as realistic as possible. And there we go. Up here it looks a little bit kind of, let's bring down that size, grab some of this grass. We completely removed the pathway off of this picture. Now this did work a little bit better than the other one with the person on the bike. This one is a little bit more difficult, I believe, because there's more detail, as opposed to this one where you can kind of get away with it because there's different colors of grasses and stuff like that. If you really want to make it really good, you have to spend more time on it. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to go with that. So now let's get into some text. I'm going to be adding text onto this picture, but you can add it onto any picture that you want. On the tools menu here, this T is going to be your text tool. All you're going to do is just hold, drag where you want your text. Up here on the options, you can choose the font that you want. If you know the font that you want, you can type it in. If not, you can go through all of these fonts and see which one you like. For me, I'm going to do Bebas. Now if we want to type in all caps, which I'm going to do, just click caps lock on your keyboard and type. We'll just do road trip. And as you saw there, I had pressed entered. I have it a little bit too spaced out. So what you can do is go over here to the text option over here to character. And we can bring it up here just to make it look better. And if you don't see that, you can always go to window, press character. And there we go, we have it. And right here, there's two A's and an arrow button. It says 50. We want to drop that down. So highlight your text and then put it to 15. Or we can go 20 if we want. So just mess around and see what works best for you. For me, I'm just gonna leave it at 20. And we want to make it just a little bit bigger. So let's go right here and we can go over to 30 if we want to. Our spacing is going to change also. Let's make it 30. And we can go up here to the big check mark and just click check. If you want to create another, let's say we want to put the date down here. We just make another layer and let's say 2020. And you probably can't see it because it's too big. So let's bring that down to about 15. Let's go down to 10. You can click on it again, press align. And if you want to move it, you can go over here to the move tool, just click and drag it and position it where you want. Now to edit the text again, you just click on the text tool. Click on this, highlight the text wherever you want. If you want to change color, you can do it up here in the option bar and you can go okay. Click that, you're good to go. Want to change the size, double click on that also. Want to change the size, let's say we want to make it 12. There we go. If we want to change it back to black, we can also add some drop shadow if we wanted to. So we click over here on the layers, depending what layer you want. So the 2020 or the road trip layer. And the 2020, you can go over here, click on that layer, go down here where it says effects, go to blending options, go to drop shadow, and here we can add a little bit of shadow in the background. Look at the distance, the spread, the size of it. This is for noise, but we're not going to add any noise. We can have multiply, we can change the blend mode. You can really make it very good, and you can switch this if you really want to make it kind of a 3D kind of option, I guess. You can call it this, or just add a drop shadow to it like that. So that's our original, and that's with the drop shadow. That's with the drop shadow, no drop shadow. It depends what you really want. You can also add a stroke if you want. Click on that. If we really wanted to, we could add this stroke, put the opacity up to 20, change the color if we wanted to white, blend mode, darken maybe, position on the inside if you want, the center, or the outside. And you can just mess around with all of these and really get down the style that you're looking for. There's no set rules in creating anything, so just have fun. Just as long as it looks good to you, that's all you need. Just mess around with all these options and all these tools and you'll be able to make something really cool. So we're just gonna press OK. We can also do it on this other one the same way. Go to effects, then go over here. We'll add a drop shadow. We'll darken it. Don't want to make it too bright. And we can really make it look different. Like we could put that right there. Overlay. You could really just do anything you really want. And it depends what style you're going for. If you're going for like that. And stuff like that. I kind of messed it up, so you can just press cancel and leave it the original one. So like I said, anything really works. You can really do anything with this. Just mess around and see what you actually like. If something looks cool to you, just do it. So now we're going to be talking about some custom shapes and some shape tools. So first, I'm going to create a custom shape with this pen tool. So I'm just going to create a letter, the letter A here. And then you just close it, just the letter A here. We're going to right click on it, and then we're going to define a custom shape here. And we'll just name it A. Now what we're going to do is go over here to the rectangle tool, right click on it, and we're going to go over here to custom shape tool. Now in custom shape tool, if we go up here to the options, right here where it says shape, there's an arrow and a drop down button. Here we can see the custom shapes, and the one we just created is right here. Or we can click on the little cog over here and we can show all of the shapes, and we can scroll through every single shape here that they have available. But we're just going to stay with our shape. See, I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger so we can see all the shapes here. These are all the shapes that Photoshop comes with, but here I'm just going to use my custom shape that I created. Now we're just going to create our custom shape. Well, we want to preserve our proportions so it doesn't come out all wonky. We're going to preserve proportions, just keep it like this, and create our shape. And that's exactly how we made it. So we have an A now. We can move it over here if we want to and place it wherever we want to. Right in the center if we want of the picture. So now if you want to change the color for any reason, you can just go over here to layer thumbnail, click on it, double click on it, and then you can just change whatever color you want. So we'll just make it like this. Click OK. And of course you can add anything, drop shadow if you want. And we can just drop shadow this. Again, just mess around with it, play around, do any creativity that you prefer. It doesn't matter. You can create anything that you want really here on Photoshop. So yeah, that's basically everything for the pen tool and the custom shape tool. You can also do any other custom shape. You just go up here and you pick a shape. You want an arrow, you can pick an arrow and just make it. Control Z, you can hold down shift so that the proportions are correct, and you can make that. If we want to be able to move that arrow, what we would do is go over here to make a new layer, then custom shape, and then shift, hold this down, and there we have our other layer. But what we can do, copy layer style, and then you can paste layer style, and it'll copy the exact type of layer. So as you see, Photoshop isn't the most difficult thing to learn, but hopefully these kind of basic techniques and basic tips help you learn a little bit more about Photoshop and how to properly use all the tools to its fullest potential. Because this is just the basic, and you can really do some really, really powerful things. Like if you can see here, this was done in Photoshop completely, and it's just something really, really powerful. Like this is a very powerful tool if you really know how to use it. And eventually everyone can get here if they put in the time and the effort to learn Photoshop and its full potential. But really, you can do all this. And that's just crazy. He turned this image into that. That is just amazing. I'll put his channel down below so you guys can go check it out and see how he does all of this crazy stuff with Photoshop. But like I said, I just taught you the very basics so you can take those and grow upon them. Of course, the more you practice, the better you'll get at Photoshop. You'll figure out things as you go along. You'll be able to recognize how to do certain things. So I hope this tutorial got you excited about Photoshop. If you guys did enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. But other than that, I have nothing else. That was the full tutorial, and I hope you take what I taught you here and really expand on it. Hopefully I'll be doing some more tutorials, and whatever I learn, I'll try to teach you guys. If you have any more questions, just let me know. And I hope you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one.